In just 9 days, a grainy online video of a 47-year-old woman from a small village was watched 100 million times. It wasn't a music video produced by a major label, nor was it a trailer or the debut of a global pop star. Instead, it was a simple clip of Susan Boyle, an unknown woman from Blackburn, Scotland, singing in front of a skeptical crowd. The audience had already made up their minds about her before she even opened her mouth. But what followed shattered expectations and broke records. This was not just a story about a woman who could sing. It was about the talent the entertainment industry had overlooked for decades. What happened when she was finally given a chance? It changed everything, though the price of fame almost broke her. A challenging childhood. Susan Boyle was born on April 1st, 1961, in Blackburn, West Lothian, Scotland, as the youngest of 10 children. Her birth was difficult, and oxygen deprivation during delivery led to what doctors later described as minor brain damage. This early medical condition would affect Susan's life in ways that would be difficult for others to understand. From a young age, Susan de Kinder worry ir fidai I in our wines. She struggled with learning, processing information differently, which led her to be labeled as difficult, slow, or odd. In school, the cruelty of other children was merciless, and she earned the nickname Susie Simple. This cruel teasing would follow her for much of her early life, with Susan often feeling like an outsider. Music as a lifeline. Amid the cruelty and isolation, there was one thing that gave Susan solace: music. From a young age, she could sing in a way that felt both natural and beautiful, even though she didn't fit the typical mold of a performer. Singing in church, at home, or just to herself in her small bedroom, music became Susan's safe space. It didn't demand anything from her except for the voice she had. Her mother, Bridget, who was deeply supportive and grounded in Catholic faith, encouraged Susan to sing publicly. It was Bridget who first saw the gift in her daughter, always pushing her gently but persistently to perform in local talent shows, no matter how small the stage. Attempts at a bigger stage. As Susan grew older, she made several attempts to step outside her small town of Blackburn and pursue her dream of singing. In the late 90s, she recorded a modest demo tape in 1999 and submitted it to a well-known Scottish charities talent competition, only to be rejected. She continued to compete in local talent shows and performed at regional competitions, but the world largely overlooked her. The entertainment industry had a very specific image of success: young, polished, and marketable. Susan didn't fit that image. Too old, too plain, too unconventional. She simply didn't fit into any of the categories the industry had created. Still, she persisted, returning to Blackburn after each failed attempt, always with the support of her mother. A life of service and caregiving. By 2007, Susan had become the primary caregiver to her elderly mother, Bridget, who was 91 when she passed away that year. Susan, now 46, had no partner and no children. Her world focused entirely on looking after her mother. She lived alone in the same council house in Blackburn, a place filled with memories of her childhood. Her singing career had never taken off, and while she loved to sing, the world outside had never really noticed her. For Susan, the idea of stepping onto a global stage seemed out of reach, but what the world did not know was that Susan had made a promise to her mother before she passed, that she would try again, one last time, to pursue her dream of singing professionally. The decision to audition. In April 2009, Susan Boyle made the brave decision to audition for Britain. Talent sound decision that almost never happened. She had tried before and faced rejection. She knew the pain of standing before judges and crowds who had already decided she wasn't what they were looking for. But her mother had always been her strongest supporter, and now that she was gone, Susan felt it was her final chance. What moved her to audition wasn't the expectation of fame or success, but simply the desire to fulfill a promise. She wasn't audition from the world. She was auditioning because it was what her mother had wanted her to do. And so alone, she boarded the train to Glasgow, hoping for something more than just another attempt that would end in rejection. The audition performance. When Susan stepped onto the stage, the audience's reaction was immediate. They assessed her in an instant, just as any crowd does. The laughter, the eye rolls, and the whispered comments were all captured by cameras. Judges like Amanda Holden, Piers Morgan, and Simon Cowell exchanged looks of sympathy and skepticism. This woman, who had just walked on stage, was expected to be nothing more than a joke. But then, Susan sang. She chose "I Dreamed a Dream" from Less Be Miserable, a song filled with raw emotion and power. The moment her voice filled the room, something changed. The audience, who had been so quick to judge her, stopped laughing. The disbelief that followed was palpable as they realized that Susan's voice was powerful, beautiful, and unlike anything they expected. The world reacts. The reaction from the audience and judges was immediate. They stood up, applauding, some of them even wiping away tears. The entire room, which had initially dismissed her, was now witnessing something extraordinary. Simon Cowell, known for his ability to read the room, was visibly shocked. He later said that it was the biggest surprise he had ever experienced on the show. Susan Boyle had completely recalibrated the audience's perception of her, and by the time she finished, the applause was deafening. The clip was uploaded to YouTube, and within hours, it went viral. Within 9 days, Susan's performance had been watched 100 million times across the world. The price of fame. As the world discovered Susan Boyle, her life in Blackburn began to change in ways she could not have anticipated. Fame, when it comes suddenly, doesn't give you time to prepare for its impact. Susan had spent decades of her life living quietly in the shadows, with only the occasional local performance to remind her that her talent still existed. Now, in just 9 days, she had become a global sensation. The pressure of fame descended on her quickly. The media frenzy, the interviews, and the public appearances came fast, leaving Susan with little time to process what was happening. She found herself in a world she wasn't prepared for, where every aspect of her life was under scrutiny. The aftermath of fame. While Susan Boyle's rise to fame was meteoric, the weeks that followed were overwhelming. She went from a life of quite quiet existence in Blackburn to becoming the subject of intense media attention. Interviews with major news outlets, appearances on morning shows, and discussions about her personal life dominated the headlines. Susan was no longer just an unknown singer. She had become a story, a symbol of the unexpected. The world had discovered her voice, but it hadn't yet fully understood the personal cost of fame. The transformation of Susan Boyle from an invisible woman to a global sensation happened too quickly for her to adjust. The world had found her, but Susan was still trying to find her place in it.